The Drakthor warship descended upon Colony 7 like a predator circling wounded prey. Their scales glimmered crimson and gold in the setting sun of the distant world humans had dared to call home. For 3 generations, the colony had thrived in obscurity, hidden in a forgotten arm of the galaxy. But nothing stayed hidden forever. Chief Karvesh stood 9 feet tall, his armor forged from the bones of conquered worlds. Behind him, his warriors dragged the human prisoners toward the transport vessels. Scientists, engineers, farmers. The Drakthor had no use for human weakness, but they recognized value when they saw it. These humans would serve in the mining colonies of Drakvar Prime, their fragile hands useful for delicate work their clawed warriors could not perform. Susan watched from behind a cargo container, her small hands pressed against her mouth to stifle her sobs. She was only 7 years old, barely tall enough to see over the metal crates scattered across the landing pad. Her brown hair hung in tangled strands around her dirt-streaked face. She had hidden when her mother, Dr. Elena Martinez, had pushed her into the storage bay and whispered urgently, "Stay quiet, my love. No matter what happens, stay quiet." But Susan had not obeyed. She couldn't. Not when she saw the dragon warriors, as the colonists called them, hauling her mother away in electromagnetic shackles. Evan, her 17-year-old brother, had been in the agricultural sector when the attack began. Susan didn't know where he was now. She only knew that her mother was being taken, and the enormous dragon chief stood between her and the transport vessel, his massive tail sweeping the ground as he barked orders in his guttural language. Something broke inside Susan's chest. Not her ribs or her heart, but something deeper. The final thread of childhood fear that kept children small and silent in the face of monsters. Her mother had always taught her that humans were not weak, that their strength came not from claws or scales, but from something far more dangerous. They refused to give up. Susan ran, her small legs pumped across the landing pad, her worn shoes slapping against the metal. Warriors turned, surprised by the tiny figure charging toward their chief. Some reached for her, but she was too fast, too desperate, ducking under their grasping claws. She reached Karvesh and grabbed the bone-plated armor covering his leg with both hands. Her tiny fingers couldn't even wrap around the ridges, but she held on with everything she had. "Your warriors just took my mama," Susan screamed, her voice cracking with raw anguish. The entire landing pad fell silent. Karvesh looked down. In 300 years of conquest, he had faced warriors from 100 species. He had stared into the eyes of dying soldiers who spat their last curses at him. He had negotiated with emperors and executed cowards, but he had never seen what he saw in this child's eyes. Humans called it defiance. The Drakthor had no word for it. "Release," Karvesh commanded in broken standard, his voice like grinding stone. "No." Susan shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "Give her back! Give my mama back!" A warrior stepped forward to pry the child away, but Karvesh raised one clawed hand. The warrior froze. "You, small," Karvesh said, studying Susan with his amber reptilian eyes. "What you do? Fight, Karvesh?" The question might have been mocking from another, but his tone carried genuine curiosity. "If I have to," Susan said, her voice trembling but unwavering. "I'll fight all of you, if you don't give her back." That's when Evan appeared. He vaulted over a container, a mining tool gripped in his hands, his face bloodied but determined. 3 more colonists emerged from hiding: an elderly man with a plasma cutter, a woman with a makeshift spear, a teenager with nothing but his fists. Then 5 more. 10. 20. They had been hiding, scattered, broken. But the sight of a 7-year-old girl grabbing a dragon chief by his armor and refusing to let go had ignited something primal in them. If she could be brave, so could they. Karvesh's warriors raised their plasma rifles, but the chief raised his hand again. The weapons lowered. In his long life of conquest, Karvesh had learned to recognize prey and predators. Prey ran. Prey hid. Prey begged for mercy. But this small human child had not run, had not hidden, had not begged. She had grabbed him and demanded what was hers. The Drakthor respected strength above all else. And sometimes, strength did not come from size or scales or plasma fire. Sometimes, it came from a 7-year-old girl who refused to let go. Your mother, Karvesh said slowly, pointing toward the transport with one clawed finger. Which? Susan pointed, her hand shaking. The one with dark hair and the white coat. Karvesh growled something in Drakthor. A warrior hesitated, then entered the transport. Moments later, Dr. Elena Martinez stumbled down the ramp, her shackles removed, disbelief written across her face. Mama! Susan released Karvesh and ran to her mother, who dropped to her knees and caught her daughter in her arms. Karvesh watched them, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to his warriors. We leave. This colony, not worth the fight. As the Drakthor warships lifted into the darkening sky, Evan approached his sister and mother, his voice hoarse. Susan, how did you? She reminded him, Elena whispered, holding her daughter close, understanding something the children did not yet grasp. She reminded him what courage looks like. The colony would rebuild. They would fortify. They would prepare for the day when the dragons returned, as they inevitably would. But on that evening, as 3 moons rose over Colony 7, the colonists spoke in hushed, awed tones about the little girl who had grabbed a dragon chief and refused to let go. Because humanity had never been about size or strength. It had always been about the refusal to surrender what they loved, no matter the odds. And the galaxy would learn to fear that far more than any claw or fang.